is going on, y'all? And thanks again for joining us here on Expanded Perspectives with me, Cam Hale. And as always, the man here beside me, the person solely responsible for the Parker County blackout of 1987, Mr. Kyle Filson.
How's it going, everybody? Yes, I'm here at Skeleton Studios, fully energized. I've got my athletic greens going. I got my vitamins going, my Lumi Labs going, my coffee, my trade coffee over here. I am fired up. We got a lot of news for everybody. If you don't follow us on social media, you won't know till now. But we got a lot of stuff coming up, man.
Yeah, we did a thing. And we're finalizing it. It's all done. It's in the wheels. Everything's going ahead. We're doing a live show, people. Some folks had asked. We decided. So, yes, this October 2022, we are going to be doing a live show at Panther Island Brewing in Fort Worth, Texas.
Yeah, kind of close to Halloween as we can get.
Yes. Yeah, that's what we're waiting on, a few dates that we've got picked. And as soon as we get those dates nailed, of course, y'all all know about it. But yeah, we're going to do a live show there in the brewery around Halloween.
Yeah, it's going to be very cool. It's not because, excuse me, not just going to be us, but we're going to have a couple of guest speakers. We're not going to give that list out till that's finalized.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be over there. And I know we get emails all the time with so many of y'all wanting to meet and greet with me and Cam. And this is your opportunity. We'll be answering questions. We'll be talking, having a couple pints over there at the brewery while we're there, and just having a good old time. I think it's going to be cool. There's going to be audience participation welcome. So if you want to share your story, feel free to come on out, and
they're going to be handing out rotten tomatoes that you can throw at us whenever you get there. And
and I'm going to try to film and record it.
Yeah.
Because then maybe it'll go up on YouTube or as a podcast. I don't know, because I haven't ironed out what the audio is going to even sound like. If it sounds like garbage, there's no point in even putting it out.
Yeah.
But if we can dial it in and it sounds pretty good, we'll release it as like a special episode. But I'm looking forward to it. Never done a live event. It's always just me and you in the studio by ourselves. Occasionally, Mary will pop in. We have had a few live guests in the past, but other than that, I'm not used to doing it in front of a crowd.
No, it's going to be, it's overwhelming to think about, but it's also fun. So I think it'll be a good time. But yeah, it's going to be, we have a plan. We have a way we want to lay it out and the way we want to work it and the way that we think you will all enjoy, all those that attend. And they also got great beer there. So it's always a plus.
Like Hazy Cat.
Hazy Cat. That's Kyle's new name, is Hazy Cat.
Yeah, after Hazel.
And like I said, if you haven't heard the band, the Quaker City Nighthawks, they also make their beer there called Queso Blanco, which is a Mexican style beer.
That's very cool. I'm interested to see how it goes. And I'm not talking about whether we'll pull it off or not. I'm not worried about that. I'm talking about the vibe. Because when you get a big, like I said, it's just the two of us. If you have a big group of people and you're all kind of in it and sharing stories, and stuff, it could be something really cool. And if it is a real big success, heck, we might start doing them more often.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm interested. I'm excited about it. Hopefully we'll have some merch available too then. But man, it has been awfully dry around here. It looks like it might rain today. I hope it does.
Yeah, we need it.
But speaking of dry, it's not only dry here in Texas, it's also dry in Iraq. Check this out. The ruins of a 3,400-year-old lost city, complete with a palace and sprawling fort, have been unearthed in Iraq after extreme drought conditions, severely depleted water levels in the country's largest reservoir, and archaeologists are excited. Now, this Bronze Age settlement, long engulfed by the Tigris River, emerged earlier this year in the Mosul Dam. And it says that researchers raced to excavate this ancient city before the dam is refilled. The discovery, they said, is the latest example of how drought conditions fueled by climate change are yielding unexpected finds. This city is the ancient city of Zakhiku.
Where was that? What's it called?
Zakhiku.
Ah, I got you.
Right, and it's located in the Kurdistan region at a site known as Commune. And this was documented by a team of German, of course, and Kurdish archaeologists. The settlement, they say, likely was a key hub during the Mitanni Empire from 1550 to 1350 BC. And a woman named Ivana, who's a junior professor of this Eastern archaeology at the University of Freiburg in Germany, said that since this city was located directly on the Tigris, it may have played an important role in connecting the core region of the Mitanni Empire, which was located in present-day northeastern Syria. They said that there's a bunch of artifacts found and these clay pots that they found. And inside these clay pots, they found a couple of, get this, Cam, tablets, 100 tablets inscribed with cuneiform script, which they don't know how these things have been preserved under the water all this time because they said it was unfired clay tabs.
They just unfired.
Unfired.
Wow.
And they're still there. But
talk about, you're like, don't touch it. Be real careful.
The sad news is that the water levels have started coming up, and the research team, they said they had to protect it with a plastic coating, and they filled the site in with gravel because they didn't want it to be
we didn't
hurt
rush
anymore.
Things away, I guess.
And the water levels are risen, and now the city's completely underwater again. And they don't know how long it'll be there underwater.
Man.
So what I like about this story is not just that was found under the Tigris River because of drought conditions. I just saw where like a week ago, Lake Mead and was also under severe drought, and they found a bunch of skeletons that were ancient. It makes you wonder when you hear all these stories about the water levels after the Great Deluge, how many things just off the coast of every coast are out there under these riverbeds and stuff.
Yeah.
Very cool. I know we haven't done anything really about archaeology in a while, but I saw that on there and I had to bring it up.
Dude, well, you're right. And I do. I think about it all the time because we discuss it. You and I have always talked about, like, how come there's not, if you're LiDARing the Amazon, why aren't you finding a way to radar out a certain distance around the entire coastline of every continent, right? To see what things are, right? Like to see if you can find anything.
Where me and you were recently hunting with Caleb on top of one of the large hills. There was a silting tray and stuff where archaeologists were out there looking for stuff.
Yeah. And that place is covered up with just like the fossil shells of things all down through there. Yep.
So it does make you start wondering, like, how many things are hidden that farmers are just knocked over or plowed over or just destroyed and moved on because they didn't care.
Yeah,
they just like I'm trying to plant a crop here, and they just knock it down. I mean, we always reference the story of the guy that told us about they were excavating a site for a job site, and they uncovered a giant dinosaur bone. The guy got in the bobcat and just smashed it into pieces and said, "Go back to work,"
and went on about their day.
It makes you wonder, how many of these things were discovered and then just nobody talked about it. Whether it's a giant skeleton from the giants that used to roam here, or who knows what, like the Kensington runestone. I mean, how many stones did some old farmer find with a bunch of crazy markings over it and just freaking turned it over and
busted
moved
it up,
on?
tossed
it, whatever.
It might be exactly.
Could be thousands of different stones. What is it?
Well, I think about it when certain people would find arrowheads. Like, I have seen a friend of mine out here on the Brazos River where we were doing some work one time find a spearhead, basically almost as big as your hand, on a man's property. And he took it and gave it to the man that owned the property that we were there working on the house when he found it, and he gave it to the guy. And the guy looked at it and was like, yeah, that's cool, and just pitched it up on his dashboard. Like, didn't do anything, just like it meant nothing to him. And I'm like, that's always what I think about is, like, I understand you may not be into it, but that's a part of history, man. You can't just, like, if you don't want to give it back or, give it to somebody that does, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the way it feels, is how many things were lost in time. It's crazy.
But I get it also is like when I was a young kid, I don't think I would have cared.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think
it's like as I'm getting older and I'm about to become history, it's like I'm more interested in history.
Arrowheads. I was always interested in arrowheads. That was always the thing, but yeah.
I was always fascinated about how they made them by napping them. I mean, I understood the process, but like in my mind, that's like, I understand the process. I had to build a house, but I definitely couldn't do it.
I love the idea. I've made some arrowheads before, just out of bottles and like out of glass. And then I've also napped one out of flint, trying to figure out how to do it. But I watch all those guys do all that stuff, and I like to imagine what it was like around a campfire, like a whole bunch of dudes making it, everybody's sitting around eating and talking, and all the family, and you got the guys and the gals, and everybody's out here making arrowheads and straightening arrows and all that stuff. Like, that's the evening chores as you sit around the campfire. Because when you find those small pieces of where they've made them, you think about those flakes. They're everywhere. Like, that literally was a group of them of just those folks sitting around. Yeah, it sounds like a great time.
It sounds like a better job than working in a cubicle, typing away on TPS reports all day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. I've got a headline here. We always talk about headlines that grab, right? Here we go. It's a question, folks. Lon's got this up, says, did the U.S. Special Forces mission liquidate Killer Bigfoot group?
Wait a minute.
Oh, yeah, you heard me.
Talking about like special operations officers are engaged in liquidating killer Bigfoot.
This is what he's got.
Not just Bigfoot. Like if that wasn't strange enough, killer Bigfoot. Like how do you know which ones are violent and which ones aren't?
Well, I guess whichever ones you shot, you better tell everybody they were violent. I mean, I don't know.
Shoot first, ask questions later.
I guess that's the way they do it. I mean, yeah, but you're right. How would you know, right? You don't even know them. How would you just walk in and start shooting?
Because some people see them and they claim that they were like, they looked beautiful and majestic. And
I could understand that.
Hugging trees and stuff.
But I could also understand how one of them would be pissed, right?
Oh, yeah.
I could get that part, too. This is what it says, that Dave Schrader received a letter from an anonymous man claiming to be a former U.S. Special Forces op, and that regarding a mission he was a part of back in the early 1990s. And so this is what it says here. In the early 1990s, I was with the teams in the Navy. We were sanctioned by an alphabet government agency to put a stop to several aggressive Sasquatch in the high country in western North Carolina. We all thought it was a joke at the mission briefing, but it was no joke. My partner, in a team of 12, was my swim buddy. He was Native American. This man wasn't scared of anything. Before we were ordered to go out. Was his name
Billy?
Yeah. Yeah, right.
He said he's Billy. With the teams and is a Native American guy. He wasn't scared of anything.
Yeah, it's Billy.
It's Billy.
It is Billy. That ain't no man, Major.
Yeah, he's right. It wasn't a man.
It wasn't. And it's, yeah, right. And it says, again, he wasn't scared. It says, before we were ordered out during the briefing, all of these agents were showing us slides of what these creatures did to people, adults and children alike, as well as the damage done to vehicles and homes. And anyway, my buddy turned white with sheer fear, and he told me, this is bad. This is really bad.
Say it in Billy's voice, though.
This is bad. This is really bad.
Yeah, there you go.
When we arrived in the little mountain village town, the sheriff met us. He told us that he'd never been so happy to see the cavalry since he'd been in Korea. He showed us the actual places where, as he put it, this is where those things, and it's the F word here, those big hairy demons destroyed this or killed them or him or her or anywhere or anything. It goes on. It says, my buddy was taking everything in like I never saw him before. So after talking with the sheriff, our lieutenant told us to fire up because we're going hunting. As we were getting our gear ready, my buddy said to me, I always thought my grandfather was just telling me scary stories about he and his brothers when they fought the wild men. We started in around 1400. By 1600, we found lots and lots of tracks. We started tracking them. We made out at least 7 different individuals. We made first contact around 1930, and it was almost dark. The point man stopped dead in his tracks and spoke into his headset, I see one, and it's huge. The lieutenant said, if you have a shot, take it. He shot this massive hairy beast with a 7.62 millimeter round, and it acted like a mosquito bit him. The creature turned around and let out a god-awful roar. Our point man quickly switched to full auto. This time the creature dropped like a rock after 10 7.62 millimeter rounds cut into his chest. At first contact, the agents radioed in and said they wanted one alive. Our lieutenant told them to go screw themselves. It took 3 days and nights with almost no sleep, but we dropped 7 hairy bastards. We found the missing people, or rather what was left of them. We had 1 casualty when a team member was snatched straight up into a tree. There was nothing anyone could have done for him. To this day, thinking of those 3 days sends chills down my spine. You won't find those 3 days in any military record or mission log. Going into our mission, debriefing, were normally where we were asked 1,001 questions about every shot fired, every angle we fired from, every angle we fired on, etc. We were simply told that the past 3 days we're doing rigorous mountain training, and during that training period we lost a man. And with that, the debriefing team stood up and walked out. Now, normally we have individual debriefing for the whole team, but this time was the one and only time it was just team. So to answer your next question, after 3 days, government agents came in and removed all 7 corpses and flew them out.
What? What state did this take place in?
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
In the 90s, in the early 90s, it says. So if this is believed to be real, would you be surprised?
Yes.
You'd be surprised that they could go out and find them that easy, because that's what I'm surprised at.
Yes.
Is that they found their tracks and tracked them down. I'm like, hold up.
just instantly. Like, why couldn't you, if you were an ex-Navy SEAL, which there's tons of them, and they all start businesses like coffee companies and, teaching people how to use handguns. Don't you think you could be really rich if you just tracked a Bigfoot? You know how to do it.
Right. My thing's, why kill them? If you found them all that, why don't you just dart them and trap them and bring them in?
That's insane.
Right? It is an insane story.
He cut one down, he says, with a fully auto 7.62, so that's got to be like an M60, right?
Like a saw. Is that what the saw shoots?
No, the saw is 5.56, I believe. I believe. I believe. So, but I know M60 is 7.62. Yeah. I've got a belt laying somewhere over there with tracers and everything.
Can you imagine just M60 and 8 foot tall Bigfeet?
Now that I mentioned that belt was given to me by my Uncle Luke, who was with the teams. Retired. He never mentioned with Sasquatch, though.
No. Yeah.
That's an insane story. But look, I like insane stories, right?
Myself, that's the reason I had to go.
That's why we're here, right?
That's right. So, as far as speaking of insane stories, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to be talking about these mysterious, like, sky snakes and not necessarily the rods, but like sky serpents and manta rays and dragons in the sky, and just all around weirdness. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives. Okay, friends, here we go. I'm going to tear off into this. I don't even know what I'm doing, right? Like, for real. This makes no sense to me. I want to go back to see where we can start. I guess the best place to start would be if we were talking about rods, right? Just the rods. And for anyone listening, you probably already know what it is. It looks like bugs, right? They look like insects flying on a video screen. And this is kind of what started this. My buddy Joe, my bud Joe, he's probably listening, had sent me a picture a set of pictures from a guy he knows, military man, Joe's military man, retired military, of something in the sky. And of course, that's not shockers, right? You're listening to this show. I mean, everybody, something in the sky. No, this was one of those. It looked like a manta ray. It had a manta ray-esque appearance. Now, it wasn't recent. It wasn't like right here when it happened. I believe it was, I can't remember now. I'd have to go back and check again exactly where that picture was. But it's here in the States. I want to say Florida, but I don't think that was right. But anyway, that doesn't pertain to the story. What pertains to the story is what the hell that was, right? Now, it was manta ray-shaped, but it looked somewhat metallic. And it moved naturally. And so that kind of went down the rabbit hole, right? So I was like, okay, what is happening here? And I got back on the kick. Y'all know I love the manta rays. We've talked about the manta rays. And then I started thinking about the rods, right? And most people, I guess it's still debatable. I don't know. Personally, I never got interested in the rods. When I saw them, I thought they were bugs. I just thought that's the way the video camera, and that's a big explanation, is frames per minute and the way it picks up. The beats of the wings are too fast. It appears blurred. And for those of you in video and whatnot, you understand the frame rates, right? When you go from 24 to like a 60, you jump up, you pick up more. It's just the way it is. Our eyes work a certain way. Everything is. That's the details. You could see how that could happen. I have seen a few videos that make me wonder, like, is that a bug? Is that simply just like anything other than a rod? Like, is it something natural, or is that something that we're not really sure of? And again, like some of the videos, you'll get confused. You looking at it, I do. I'm like, I'm on the fence, back and forth. Well, so that's where it went. I got to thinking about the manta rays. I got to looking into that. And then I remembered some stories of sky snakes, the sky serpents. And then that opened up a whole nother can of worms, right? Because I think of sky serpents, I instantly think of Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, right? It comes in, all this cool looking stuff. And I always, and I know, the way it rolled in off the oceans. I get all that, the way it worked out. The whole story with Montezuma and all this, I get it. But just the idea of that being a thing, a sky serpent. So I had to look into that because I remember upper atmosphere creatures or cryptids. I remember a story a while back. This was probably when I was junior high. I remember hearing stories back then of people claiming that they had pilot buddies friends that flew planes commercial jets, maybe in the military things, but they had seen things in the clouds that looked like animals and couldn't explain it. Absolutely zero explanation for it. So I had to look into, okay, now I've got to go take a look at more manta rays, possibly sky snakes, right? We're going to get into that. All of these crazy things in the upper atmosphere that just shouldn't be there. It would be real easy to write that off if we were back, let's say, in the 1800s, right? Prior to anything flying, we see something along those lines. It would be real easy because it blows your mind. But when things fly now, and we fly, and all the abilities that we have, and the things that we know about UFOs, and the vehicles in space that we see, or in the sky that we see, it's not as overwhelming, right? It's almost kind of lost the allure. Yeah, it's still fun. It's still amazing. Yeah, I get all that, but y'all know what I mean. It's not quite as shiny to everyone as it used to be. Now back that up 100 years, 150 years. Yeah, it's probably going to be a little bit more of a thing. And so I found some accounts that took place back in the day, way back in the day. Like some of these come from in the 700s. Some of these come from the 1700s, 1400s. Like there's a lot of these crazy sightings, and some of them are within the last 10 years. Some of them are within the last year. We have some really weird things. So I go back to an Indonesian chief back in Sumatra. Okay. This is in 1833. He had found or had met a couple of missionaries. And so the chief decides to tell these missionaries what had happened to him. And the story that he tells is that he swore to these missionaries that him and one of his buddies, one of his compatriots, had been on a hunting trip, been out running around, whatever, and that they had saw a snake fly through the air. So they freaked out, right? They see the snake flying, they watch where it lands, they go to it, and they kill it. They kill this thing. And so the missionaries don't believe any of this, right? They're like, there's no way, none of this stuff. And the chief's like, man, it had no wings. It had nothing, right? And it was only about 4 foot long. But we do know that snakes fall out of trees. There actually are flying snakes that will flatten out, right? Like you've seen them. Pull them up on YouTube if you haven't, but you can see the documentaries. And it looks crazy, okay? As this thing flies and moves, it looks crazy, right? So this easily is a natural animal. We know that's what this is. This is no big thing. You jump forward in a year into this story, and one of the missionaries is walking through a forest there near a river. And the story goes that he was right in this area of where this flying snake was, and that they see, allegedly, another flying snake. Same size, same everything, moving along, right? And their story goes that the tree that it flew to was over 200 feet away. Same size, same everything. Which I guess, look, on the side of a mountain, you jump off up a tree on the side of a cliff, or, you know what I mean, on the mountain range, on the grade. You jump off, you fly as a flying snake. Things wrote. So it took off. It's one of those things that this takes off. Okay, there's flying snakes. We now know there's flying snakes. We see them. We're not talking about anything crazy. We're not talking about upper atmosphere snakes. We're not talking about anything of that, right? Jump forward to 1873. There's Mr. Hardin, farmer out there in Bonham, Texas, and he reports what he saw was a enormous snake, gigantic snake. He said it was yellow and striped in color is what he ended up talking about. And he goes on to say that when he saw this thing, it was floating inside of a cloud. He looked up out of the fields. He said, I could see it because of its color, the striking color shining out of that cloud. But I could see this snake, and I could see this snake roll and coil itself into itself inside of this cloud. And then as it's like it's thrusting or striking its head out of the cloud and propelling the cloud forward is what he described seeing. So how do you misidentify that, right? You have to safely assume a farmer in the 1870s would understand what a snake looks like. You wouldn't mistake an alleged aircraft for, a snake. You just wouldn't. And it wouldn't be the easy way to describe it. People have talked about, well, that's just their easy way to describe it. Pretty sure this fella knew what a snake was, yet he sees this in the sky. Not long after that, someone else reported in Fort Scott, Kansas, 2 people 2 people describe what they saw. The same thing. A huge serpent in the sky, perfectly shaped, every bit of it. But what they said was as it coiled and crossed in front of the sun, it vanished in the sunlight. So what the heck is this? Where the heck is this going, right? Vanishing into the sunlight. So then I'm like, wait a minute. Has people seen this? Y'all know, like we've talked about, when people set up their telescopes, they get all this low Earth orbit stuff going by. People have seen things crossing in front of the moon, these unidentified objects. Is there some of that? Well, there is. There is some of that. Some of that I'm talking about dates all the way back again to 1883. A fella named Jose Bonilla. He was an astronomer there in Mexico, and Jose is believed to be the first person to ever, photograph these anomalies that could be something like that, these unknown things in front of the sun. 1883, August 12th, he's taking pictures of sunspots. Here's really cool. They use wet plates to take it. So this old school stuff, it's really neat. What he was exposing was 1/100th of a second to capture these pictures looking into the sun. He was looking for sunspots. And during this time, he caught several objects moving in front of the sun. Now, you want to hear something crazy? Even back then, people were dismissing it as geese. Those are geese that are flying over, right? That's what's going on. That's nothing more. Another person even said, hey, look, maybe what he caught was nothing more than comet fragments that are passing up there as he's looking up into all of this through his telescope, however this whole thing works. Nobody, right? Nobody wanted to talk about the fact that maybe these things that appear to be oddly shaped, not UFO shaped, more animal shaped, more along the shape of a rod, more along the shape of a snake. Could he have been the first person to see this? Could these things have actually been there? And what's weird is it looks like there's something to this. Like as madness as this world is, it looks like there's something to it. I found an account that happened a few years ago. A person writes that my brother and a couple friends were loading up the truck to drive out to a dark spot to get a good look at a meteor shower. And when loading up the truck, I noticed movement. Looked up and said, hey, look, there's a meteor. And when everyone looked and we quickly realized there was no meteor, what we were witnessing in the street lamp light, I could only describe as an undulating snake. It was completely translucent. We could see the stars through it. It just flew over the trees and out a similar area in that direction, and then out of sight in a matter of seconds. Now, they go on to say that there was no discernible features, like they couldn't see a mouth, no wings, no head, no eyes, just snake-shaped. They're guessing maybe 3 to 4 foot wide, folks, and around 30 feet in length. Now, they report that this thing moved in a way that, this is an interesting part, that the way the Chinese dragons, when you see the people inside the Chinese dragons and making it move in that costume, they report that that's how it moved. It moved just like that. They said it looked like a biological creature, and it moved, they said, with intention. Not like a bag in the wind, not anything like that. They also have to state that they were all sober at the time of this sighting. Now, it makes me go back to start thinking about the thing that my daughter and I saw, the things that have been reported. Didn't move like that, right? It moved against the wind, the things we saw, but it moved more bag-esque, the way it kind of flowed against itself. Not anything in a natural shape. Yet these people are reporting seeing a translucent snake in the air. So here we are again. Glimmer snakes. Is that what we got popping off? A little glimmer snake action. So there's more. There's way more to this. You go to looking at upper atmosphere creatures, it doesn't make sense. I have another one for you that someone reports that they saw something on a fishing pier in the Outer Banks of Northern Carolina back in early 2000. This person says that they were a kid, okay? And that they had gone out there, and what they remembered is this. It looked like a long coiled red cylinder suspended in the sky. Now, they go on to say that the sky was clear blue skies, so you can't tell how far it is, right? Like, we're not sure how far up it is and whatnot. But that they go on to report that what they remember more than anything is how it looked like a snake, how it moved like a snake. But this one had color, wasn't clear. So people had seen this. Now, you'll see some pictures, and here's what's funny. The funny thing about this is it could, I guess, in theory, be mechanical, I guess. I guess that's not what I'm trying to say. Organic. Let's say an organic movement. You see people build those robots that move like snakes, move like things like that because they're natural. The way everything works, we know Mother Nature works this way. We could build something that works like that. Maybe that's how this happens. Maybe that's kind of what this snake thing is. I can't imagine why, though, you would use that as a craft. If that's a craft and it still to me feels like something that, like I said, is natural, is a more natural creature. So there's more to this whole thing. Like I said, we start getting into this craziness of all this stuff. In April of 1388, in 1388, there was a sighting about a dragon seen, a flying dragon seen in many places. Also, in 1762, there was one that was reported to have been seen over Devonshire, England. Been viewed for almost 6 minutes. You roll it all the way back, like I told you, the 700s. 793 AD, there was a chronicle, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, that was reported that, and I'm going to quote you this, these were exceptional flashes of lightning and fiery dragons were seen in the air and soon followed by a great famine. And then it goes on and talks about the other things that they saw a few years later. Almost 20 years later, it was reported that they saw more in the sky after sunset. They believed that they could see these serpents moving, and they don't really allude to a famine after that, just the first one. So now it goes to Megan, well, could it have been comets? Are these comets that they're seeing and all that? But I think it's us, right, that explain it away. And what I mean by that is we always like to poo-poo on older sightings as they didn't know what they were seeing. How do we know what we're seeing? We don't know any more than they do, right? Like they had some pretty good stuff. We got some pretty good stuff. They had more things figured out than we do on certain areas and vice versa. So for us to believe that they were so stupid that they didn't know what they saw in the sky whenever there's no telephone, there's no television, there's nothing to draw your attention away from your natural environment. So you would spend your time in your natural environment. So that was something that would definitely get your attention. So for them to report this as a fiery dragon, I kind of have to lean towards the fact that it was something to them that looked like it, right? And again, don't forget, now we're talking about, again, these giant serpents that we saw in Texas. Could this have been something? I don't understand why, like we said, why they want to dismiss some of these things. But if you jump forward into 1882, there's some more sightings. 1882, at 4 p.m., March 10th, 1882, a couple of fellows were startled by what they saw in the sky. They heard this noise, the sound of wings. They couldn't quite make it out. They were just like, what is this? Now, they're in California, Hurlington, California. They're out there doing a little logging, right? Getting them some wood, getting everything done, just sticking to their job like normal, not paying any attention. They look up, and what they report seeing makes no sense again. They report it looked and moved like a crocodile, like an alligator. They're seeing this thing move through there. They said it's about 40 foot above the treetops. Now, the fella that was involved in this whole thing, named Joseph Howard, a lumberjack, there with his buddy Thomas, Joseph pops a shot at it, takes a shotgun round out and hammers this thing, right? But what he reports is it sounded like it hit tin. Sounded metallic when he shot it. It goes on to say that this thing made a cry similar to that of like a bear roaring, and the sound a calf would make, like the beller that a calf would make. But said, now this is what went on here. Howard said, look, there's no, it made a noise. We heard the sound. That was it. There were a number of folks there helping them that went on to say, yeah, we saw this thing too, that we saw it after they shot. We heard them shoot. Everybody goes to look. They see it. Here's this metallic sounding crocodile, I guess, that's moving through the air. So everybody there was like, no. If this guy shot, this is a no BS guy. Like we hear that right in the past. Everybody's like, this is a no BS guy. You kind of have to safely assume it's a no BS guy, or they probably wouldn't be a story about it, right? If the story started off, this guy's full of crap, but this is what he saw, there's no story there. So it's best to leave this guy's full of crap out of the story, right? So at least these people throw in, man, you got to take him at his word. This is what it is. So we're assuming he saw a craft. At least, but the sounds, the metallic noise it hitting, craft, but the sound it makes in reaction to the shot, I'm like, what the hell is that? So this goes on. There's more and more. There's another place that had happened in South Carolina. 3 sisters in 1888, Darlington County, were on a little walk, and they said they heard something. The hissing sound. They weren't sure if it was the sound of like a bird flying over where you can hear the wind tearing over the wings, or if it was the sound that this thing was actually making. So they go to looking, right? They're like, oh, what is this? They finally catch a glimpse of something moving, what they said, at the speed of a hawk through the sky. They estimate it was a 15-foot snake flying above the tree line. Now, again, we see this stuff with the trees. You got something to gauge it. You can tell if it's in the trees or if it's above the trees, right? You can see that. They're saying it's 15 foot above the trees, 15 foot in length, but above the trees. So you've got something to kind of gauge it on that's in between you and it, correct? So it's another one of those things, moving it relatively quickly, and they could hear it making sound. Here's another one that's kind of odd that I'm going to read to you. This happened, it said, from 1897. A fella named John Rosa talked about this. Happened in Detroit. This was actually printed, I believe, up in the newspapers in Detroit, but this is what it says. Going down Grand River for my papers, the Morning Tribune, about 4 a.m, the policeman I was with and I saw an object that looked to be about 3 foot in diameter. It was about 1,000 foot in the air and headed east. It was a silvery color, and it had a tail about 3 blocks long. It traveled like those big sea serpents you read about, skimming over the top of the water, and it made a low hissing noise that we could just barely hear. My dad, who was leaving our home for work, also saw this thing and said that it seemed to pass right over our house on Rivard between Leland and Alexandrine. I don't even have any idea how that place is at, right? But anyhow, this thing up there has flown down and went over. Dad comes out and sees it. People are seeing these sky snakes, these sky serpents. So I found you something crazy with that too. We see these sky serpents, and there's numerous tales. I've read one of the pilot flying, I believe it was a cargo ship. I want to say it was 1961, flying a cargo plane rather. Looks out the window only to realize, and this is, I believe, is 200 or 300 yards out, he noticed nothing giant. Said that's what kind of caught him off guard, is it was subtle. He said this thing couldn't have been more than 20 or 30 foot in length. It looked to be a grayish green, so somewhat metallic color, I'm assuming by, depending on, a grayish green serpent. And said that it was moving in a serpent fashion, undulating, parallel to the ground, so left and right as it's moving, but that it was moving like slowly. So it's not moving quickly, like it's banking and then back and banking and back and banking and back, like it's just, I picture snow skiing, going down the mountain. You're just one side of the run to the next, real smooth and easy. It's real pretty. This fella claims that he was high altitude, traveling at some speed when he looked out the window, and this snake that was 20, 30 foot in length is moving and keeping pace with the plane in the trees. He's watching it, or in the trees, in the clouds. He's watching it come in and out of the clouds, moving, and said this went on for a solid 60 seconds before it banked away and moved off. So he's flying along. He looks, there it is. It appears. He can't believe what he's seeing, and then it's gone again. Of course, you're not going to report things like that instantly. Like, yeah, this was a tower. I need to go ahead and tell you there's a giant snake right outside my window. They're going to be like, sir, would you land? Please land. Just turn around and come back. The people don't need their supplies that much. You get your crazy self back here. We got to get you looked at, right? So there's probably a lot more of these sightings that people have had that they don't want anyone to know, especially as a pilot, like we've talked about this. So again, We start seeing these snakes. We know of these giant dragons in the skies. And we know of these, like Joe had sent me, the thing that looks like a manta ray. Or what we know, devil rays, manta rays, whatever you want to call them. What are they doing in the sky? So I go to looking again. Here's what's strange. Texas has had a lot of manta ray sightings. These flying dark rays. This stuff has happened a lot. There is several sightings down around Houston. Now, here's something that I want to throw back out with that. Sorry. The thing is this. If you were to see a manta ray, could you have possibly mistaken? Now, I'm not saying these up-close sightings. I'm not referring to the ones that you see there. I'm talking about a glimpse or something. Could some of these manta ray sightings possibly be Mothman? With their wings tucked a certain way? Could it be where you misidentified one cryptid for another? I don't know. It's just funny. It just makes me think about that. This takes place down around Houston, Texas. Okay, I'm going to read this to y'all. You're going to get a kick out of this, I think. This took place in 0405. And this fellow is talking about seeing a manta ray, a biological craft. Different, says what he talks about, this dark devil ray. He says that I was on a feeder road in heavy standing traffic. I was just watching the traffic in front of me carefully. The bridge was over this feeder road, and the feeder road ran parallel to the freeway. The freeway had moving traffic, just the feeder road had standstill traffic. From where my position was in my truck, I was about 50 to 75 feet from the bridge. Now, the bridges in Houston usually have lights under, and the Dunlavy Bridge did not have lights under. The area around and under the bridge was in total darkness. However, lights were in other areas close to this bridge, and with the standstill traffic along the feeder road leading under the bridge, lights provided enough to see the DDR. So the area of the bridge I saw, the DDR, was between the feeder road and the freeway, an area about the size of a small store. And there I was in traffic, watching closely with eyes fixed straight ahead. Now, the DDR that he's referring to, or this person's referring to rather, is a dark devil ray. That's what they're talking about, dark devil ray. And it says that when this dark devil ray made its appearance, what I saw was astonishing. The DDR, with wings up, levitated from the ground to underneath the bridge. Never did the DDR flap or move its wings. The movement was from the left to right, up and diagonally to under the bridge. I was astonished and bewildered that I saw with my eyes fixed upon it. This thing move. The wingspan from the upturned wing left to right was about 10 to 12 feet. The DDR length from head to tail was no more than 10. I did not see a whip tail. I did notice that the creature was completely black, darker than its surroundings. The DDR seemed to do nothing more than levitate from the ground to underneath the bridge. My complete view was a profile view from 50 to 75 feet from said DDR. Now, I didn't see any glowing eyes, as this thing was completely and totally black. Noting that manta ray UFOs, says this person goes on to say, I went to YouTube, did a little studying, and sources to distinguish the differences or similarities. Goes on to talk about this fellow's name's Vince. So Vince saw something in Houston that looked manta ray-esque. Now, if you were to see a manta ray flying, let's go back to that too. Maybe it's not the Mothman. Could you have mistaken a ropin, right? A pterosaur, a pterodactyl. Same basic idea of what we see. Now, we always talk about, could it have been because of the feathers? You know, they ever talk about the feathers on them. You know, is it skin? We don't know if they were skin now, this, that, and the other. But we know the way manta ray looks. They're out there now. So these are, again, you could misinterpret certain cryptids for other cryptids, I suppose, right? Would be it worked out that way. Here's another one from down around Houston, down around Humble, actually. It says, my husband and I were grilling out in our backyard one Sunday afternoon about 5 p.m. It says a stingray-looking bird flew over our home and said it must have been about 2 foot in length and width. We were sitting there having a conversation when it caught our attention. It says it looked down at us and then continued flying. We sat there in shock as we had never seen anything like it before. We both just looked at each other and watched it fly until it disappeared into the trees and then turned back to one another and said, what the hell was that? Yeah. How wild is that, right? There was another one that happened down around Laredo. Says, I was driving home to my house at 1:20 in the afternoon when I came across this stingray, this grayish white looking thing flying over my car. Coming from the lake we have here in Laredo, Texas, going into the golf course next to it. It was roughly 3 feet wide, maybe bigger, and it had some sort of glide to it. No wings. It just looked like an exact stingray. Literally. And it passed about 30 foot in front of me, or my husband and I, nope, this one was alone. Oh, here we go. Yep. Of me, and I watched it for about 10 seconds. It looked as if it was swimming, but it was flying. What could this creature be? And again, this person goes on the internet, starts looking around. Guess what? All they come across with are these crazy manta rays. So, this isn't the only place that has them, folks. We are seeing and are getting reports and finding stories again of more of these winged humanoids, if you will, these flying manta rays. Utah pops off with them. Arizona pops off with them. So it's not like they're near the ocean, right? Because that's my first thought. We're going to be near Houston. Well, maybe these things are some sort of underwater alien species. That's not what this is. There's no water in Arizona for them to fly out of, right? No manta rays. What are they getting out of, like an aquarium in a zoo? I don't know what's going on. But whatever it is makes absolutely no sense. No sense whatsoever that you're going to see snakes in the sky. You're going to see, manta rays flying by. Any of this stuff up in the sky. It doesn't make, like, we already know that snakes fly. Like, we've established that. We know a lot of things. Is it really flying? It's just like falling with style. Isn't that what it is, to quote Jason Boland? So that's it, is like, crashing isn't anything but falling with style. That's kind of the way the snake operates. So I don't know what you could mistaken for this. I don't understand also why it's been back from the 700s. There are accounts here all through the U.S. We get them from Ohio, from Maryland. We get them around from Indiana, of giant snakes observed in the sky. Crazy things happen. People are seeing them where they've flown over. They've seen them down by the rivers, flying over stuff. People have come across them, found them. I have found stories where, here's the wild thing. I've either found them moving or sitting. I've not found one yet where someone has seen it take flight, like walked upon it and then it takes off, right? Like jumps into the sky. I've never seen that. Never found one like that. I'm going to leave you with a pretty wild story here. This comes from Hurlington, California on March 10th of 1882. This comes from the Gridley Herald newspaper. It's a quote from there that says this. It says, and I guess this is more of, again, with the lumberjacks as they talk about what they saw. We were startled by the sound of many flapping wings in the air. Looking up, we perceived passing over our head, not more than 40 feet, above the treetops, a creature that looked like a crocodile. It was, to our best judgment, not less than 18 foot in length and 2 foot across the body from head to tail. A distance of probably 12 foot. The tail itself was 4 foot long, and it tapered from the body to a point probably 8 inches wide. The head was in the neighborhood of 2 foot in length, and its jaws, for its mouth was open, could not have been less than 16 inches. On one side of the body, between the head and the tail, were 6 wings, each projecting between 18 inches and 2 feet from the body. As near as we could see, these wings were about 15 inches broad and appeared to be formed similar to a duck's foot. On the other part of the body, we counted 12 feet, 6 on a side. Folks, what is that? What the heck could that be? So, I'm going to wrap this baby up. We're going to talk to Kyle after this, and we've got a few more stories to go over about crazy things in the sky. Hope y'all enjoyed it as much as I did. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives. Okie dokie, y'all. It's the return. We got to find out with Mr. Filson. Brad, what do you think about those? Now, mind you, these sightings started all the way back in the 700 AD. People report seeing it into the 1500s. It's almost like every century there's been reports from modern times all the way back to recorded times of people seeing things like that in the sky. And it's not mechanical. Although the crocodile sounds like it was a ship.
Yeah, right.
But
I know what you're talking about. I mean, in recent times, it could be misidentification of drones. Drones are very popular now. People have them everywhere. I know that you're supposed to have certain licenses and stuff, but people don't care about doing that.
And you saw the one where the guy made it where it looked like a dude with a cape, like Superman, and flew, right? So knowing that now.
I'm saying nowadays that can be responsible for some of the strange sightings. But like you mentioned, these sightings have been going on for a long time, long before there were drones.
Yeah.
So
long before there was even flight.
Long before there was even flight.
Now, there may have been other things flying, obviously.
Well, this is the big question. When these things are seen, I think that you could put them into two categories. Are they like some kind of mechanical, something that was designed and built, that's UFOs, something someone's piloting, someone's flying, or are they biological?
Yeah.
Is it something living up in the atmosphere? You hear all these stories about, like, we know what lives. We once thought that the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean had no life. There's no way nothing could be living down there. Then our technology got good enough to build submarines that could go deep enough. And then we find out that there's a whole nother ecosystem down there, right?
The Meg.
There's
volcano sharks.
There's the Megs and the volcano sharks and the vents and these giant worms.
Another reason not to get in the ocean.
All the reasons not to get in the ocean. So, like, there's
no good reason to get in.
So we thought there was no life down there, but it turns out we were wrong. Now flip it.
Yeah.
We think that nothing's living way up in the atmosphere, but maybe we're wrong. Maybe there is something living up there. We need to do a whole show on that too. And so when something like a manta ray is coming down and stuff, this is something that lives way up there, but it's coming down. I don't know. And you know what I'm talking about. You know the stories I'm referring to. Sometimes they'll find like large gelatinous cubes laying in somebody's yard, and they think it was one of those things up there that died, fell to earth. I don't know. You've seen the videos of, like, from outer space, stuff moving around. Yep. Maybe it's not UFOs. Maybe those are living things.
Well, exactly. And that's what we talked about with, like, the fella that I forgot his name. I just went blank, Jose or whatever, that took the very first photos of the sun, that saw those that they tried to say was geese. People are like, well, that's, the sunspots. That was geese. That was this. That was that. Right. It probably was not. And like we had discussed before, talking about rods and things, that stuff, I get it. Like I even talked in the segment, we'd seen them and I always thought they were bugs and all this. And that may be what it is, but we can't apply that thinking to what people are seeing, these snakes in clouds and dragons and all that.
Who was the rods guy? Was that Jose Escamilla?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he did the one on the moon.
Yep.
I don't remember what it was called. Anyways, you could probably find those on YouTube.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Also, speaking of interesting in YouTube, thanks. Several people emailed us about these Predator short films that are on YouTube.
Yes.
That are made by fans.
Pretty good.
I watched several of them.
Stuff.
Some of them were kind of cheesy. Some of them were pretty good, though. So thanks for sending that to us. I thought it was very, very cool.
And also, I got something else here. Our homie, Mr. Mike Mays, the Texas Cryptid Hunter.
Yeah.
His book's popping out, y'all. The Valley of the Apes, The Search for the Sasquatch in Area X. And we've got some friends that have been to Area X, and we actually were invited to come up there to check some stuff out. We've never made it all work out, right? Which we may have to, but we are going to go meet up with Mike this summer and do a little looking around in East Texas.
That book's out now?
Yes, it's come out. It's on. You can get it on Amazon, the whole thing, but it's called Valley of the Apes, The Search for Sasquatch in Area X. We're going to get him to come on and talk about it and tell some of the crazy stuff that's happened on there.
That's awesome. I got to order that today.
Yeah, so we'll have to get them coming. So, yep, don't forget about that. So if you want to get some really cool stuff and get it before your friends do, go ahead and order that book up too. Help Mike out. Yeah.
Right.
And I'll see what I can do. I'm going to try to get Mike to come up to the live show too.
That will be fun.
Right? We'll get him to come up and we'll get him to talk about Black Panthers.
Yeah, that'll be cool. If you have any stories you'd like to share with me and Cam, please do not hesitate. Email the show, expandedperspectives@yahoo.com. You can call the hotline, 888-393-2783. Let's not forget about today's sponsor, Athletic Greens. Athletic Greens is going to give you free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/expanded. That's athleticgreens.com/expanded. Cam, What do you got planned for this week?
Oh, when we get done doing this, I got to go run to town and get to the local Wiccans. So I had them bless my dice for this evening.
Probably a good idea. I got to get a couple more jobs out because we are leaving for Alabama. And not next week, but the week after. So I got a whole bunch of stuff I got to get done before then. Because you know how it is.
So busy. I haven't hardly seen you.
It's great. Well, it's summer. Right. And our kids are at home again. And so I don't want to be at the house.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
So you're just working.
I don't mind hanging out with little Fizzy so much. But the twins, they're teenagers. They're too cool for me. And it just, it causes problems.
And they let you know they're too cool for you.
Oh, yeah. Everybody does. But, most people are cooler than me. So.
Hey, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Word. We're going to roll some dice.
We are?
All right. I guess we better get out of here.
All right, everybody. Take care. Till next time, I'm Kyle. He's Cam.
Peace, y'all.